Of a law about protecting children about content. So every time I make a video, I got to say it's safe for kids. So I have to clean up my act a little bit. So with that, also, so who became the Secretary of State after APUSH? John C. Calhoun. And what's C for Caldwell? And what's Calhoun's wife's name? Fluoride. I told you that once before, I believe, about the Peggy Eaton scandal. And so fluoride and John. But they said that slavery is good, but slavery's doing what for the slaves? Yeah, they're civilizing them. They're making their life better. There's less deaf, dumb, blind, idiots, and insane, right? Thank you, slavery. In fact, after you read the positive good theory, that slavery thing sounds pretty good. So with that, yeah, they're just evil. And then we got that. But it wasn't. Texas is still hanging over everything. When Polk was nominated, it's all manifest destiny. What was his slogan? 54-40 or fight, meaning what territory? Oregon. And what did they just avoid then? Texas. They could avoid Texas. And Clay did a bad job with Texas. So we got to this, right? We got American system. Did we get to this? No. A third party. Now, there's always third parties, but most of them are very small in America because, remember, we have a winner-take-all system. But the Liberty Party jumped in, and even though it's a very small party, its leader, James Birney, did have a lot of support north of Philadelphia. And Liberty meant an anti-what kind of party? I gave you a hint up there. This is an abolitionist party. So free soilers want to stop the expansion of slavery. This party wants to get rid of slavery completely. A lot of Whigs thought it might take away votes from Northern Whigs, but it's also going to take away some votes from Free Soil Democrats. But that's why we don't have a third party, because they will take away votes from one of the other parties, and that's why we're stuck with two. That could either, depending on your point of view, but it is pretty narrow because of winner take all. This is one of the few elections where this might have an impact. So with this, yeah.
Wait, did you say the Democrats wanted to stop the spread of slavery?
No, they thought they might take away votes of Free Soil Democrats who want to stop the spread of slavery.
Okay.
And there were a lot of Free Soil Democrats. And a lot of Whigs who were opposed to slavery called conscience Whigs. But it was complex. The Salt River, which is in New Mexico, that was always seen as the western border of Texas, even though it wasn't. They always drew these cartoons. And there are all these great cartoons from this election trying to show them trying to cross over the river, and that would somehow, so crossing the river means get over the treachery of the whole Texas issue and get to the presidential chair. And the golden age of ballooning. Paris just had a big balloon exhibition. There were like balloon pictures everywhere. So a hot air balloon, what amazing technology. Actually it is, but still. Here's Clay and Frelinghuysen going over the river, but popping Polk and Dallas's balloon as they tumble into the river. And who's already drowning? Who's that? He's bald with hair on the side. That's Van Buren. And who's this? That's Jackson beating up at him with her cane. So that is a Whig cartoon. Here, almost the same thing, but now it's it's Polk and Dallas going over the river, trying to be stopped by Clay and Frelinghuysen. Do you want another one? You can't have enough Salt River cartoons. Here's another one. Here is Clay and Frelinghuysen, and it's like they're prancing over the bridge, and they're trying to get over this bridge, or trying to make their own bridge, and there's Polk, there's Dallas, here's Van Buren drowning, going yeah like that, and there's Jackson trying to hold the bridge up. They have a lot of great cartoons, and there's many more. Just Salt River. Huh? This is Thomas Hart Benton, senator from Missouri, and mint drops were like a popular new candy at that time, as seen as candy for the common man. I know.
Why are Clay and the other dude holding hands?
I don't know. Why not? But here's my personal favorite cartoon. Here is the Beast. And this is supposed to be Polk, and it looks like he's impaled through the neck of the Beast. But he's supposed to be riding the Beast, which is Texas. And so the implication is, it's hard to read it, but the Beast, the issue of Texas is not going to give the presidency, but Polk's stuck with going for Texas. And so this great cartoon, you know, is the cloven hooves. And what does that look like? Yeah, everybody, do you see Abraham Lincoln now? Which makes absolutely no sense to anybody in 1844. Lincoln was not even elected to office, and he didn't have a beard, but it's still kind of funny that it does kind of vaguely look like Lincoln. By the way, today is the anniversary of Lincoln giving a Gettysburg Address. Today. But anyways, if you don't know the Gettysburg Address, you soon will. So with that, in 1844, it would be close with the popular vote, but remember that doesn't matter. In the Electoral College, Polk would win a victory. The Democrats would win this. You notice it's kind of national. The Whigs would claim that Bernie took away votes in New Hampshire and Pennsylvania, but probably he took votes away equally. Not like the Free Soil candidate, which is coming in the next election. And Polk is now president. And to many Democrats, they saw this as a mandate to annex what? Texas. The people want Texas. Now remember, they all tried to avoid it, even though everyone talked about it. But now they're going to get Texas. The problem for this, for the Democrats, this is first week in November, 1844. The president will not be inaugurated until March 3rd, 1845. Who is still president? Who? Tyler is still president. And Tyler has 5 months as president, which is such a weird system. Heck, the next Congress won't be seated until September of 1845, and they were elected in 1844. But Tyler's still president. And so he is mad, furious about this. By the way, we have a term for that. Somebody who still is an elected official, but either they haven't been reelected or they're not going to run again, or in some things they're term limited out, but they're still in office, but they're not going to be reelected, meaning they've lost a lot of power and influence because they're not coming back. Anybody know what we call them today? Yeah, say it.
Lame duck.
Yeah, they're lame ducks. So Tyler was a lame duck. So right now, Governor Bullock is term limited out. So he is a lame duck right now. It just means that you don't have as much influence because you won't be here after the next election. So Tyler is there, mad, furious about the whole thing. But in Congress, they begin to debate Texas. So, Texas. And they came up with a great idea. Let's pass a joint resolution.
Who's that?
Members of Congress, mostly Democrats. The thing about the joint resolution was this. It only requires 1 over 50%, so a majority. A treaty requires 2/3 of a vote. The Constitution says nothing about annexing territory, but Jefferson, stretching the Constitution, would say a treaty would work. What land did Jefferson give with the treaty? The Louisiana Purchase. And so they all thought we needed a treaty. That's how they got Florida, etc. Well, why not just pass a up or down vote to annex Texas? Why not? It doesn't say in the Constitution, just pass a law, which joint resolution means both the House and the Senate pass it, annex Texas, period. So they begin to debate this. The problems are this. If you look over that map, I see the purple or the black border and how big Texas was. They had to cut down that border for lots of reasons, for administrative reasons and a number of other things. Remember also yesterday I told you how Texas had that big debt? They basically made an agreement with Texas. You give up all this land here, and the United States will assume your debt, pay off your debt. A compromise. They also said another thing. The president can bring Texas in, but will it be a free state or a slave state? They didn't want to put that on the law because slavery was so divisive for so many obvious reasons. So this is the great thing they did, a very clever little trick that everybody saw through, but it allowed them to act like they weren't doing it. Texas could come in with their existing laws, meaning, will it be a slave state or a free state? It'll be a slave state, because Texas did not, or Texas had slaves. Remember the whole thing about the Alamo, the whole thing leading up to that was to keep slavery.
I thought they got rid of the slaves so that they could be free.
They only threatened that.
That was like,
Yeah, that was just like to try to get the US to do it. And the other thing is this. This is still a massive state, isn't it? And so the thought was, well, is it going to be 2 states, 3 states? We'll leave it up to Texas. So the law says Texas, meaning their assembly, can decide if they want to be up to 5 states. And that is still the law today. Texas can decide to be up to 5 individual states. So the Texas State Assembly, which they're not meeting now, but just imagine they came in a special session and met, they could vote and make themselves into 3 states, 4 states, 5 states, whatever they want. That's still the law of the land today. And it's one of those strange quirks, because other states, it would have to go through Congress. Texas, no. California has talked every once in a while about breaking up into 4 states. But that would have to go through Congress. Not this, because it's already been passed. Texas has not thought about it very often. Texas likes being, Texas, we're big, we're Texans. But in the early 1960s, Texas talked about dividing up into 2 or 3 states so they could have more senators to stop what kind of legislation in the 1960s? Exactly. To keep civil rights laws from passing, to make sure that people will not be equal. Yes. So they talked about dividing into states, huh?
like segregation.
Yeah. The laws, there'll be no Jim Crow, we'll get to them. Yeah, but that tells you a lot about Texas. And so with that, in fact, Texas is interesting to say, the president most responsible for getting civil rights laws passed was a Texan, Lyndon Johnson, who looks at you every day from the back of the class, LBJ for the USA. He, with Tobias Funke and Danny DeVito. Who? Danny DeVito's birthday was yesterday.
How old is
Huh? Is he that old? Yeah. He's very political too. So moving on. So they passed this law. A couple things. First off, isn't this a really good map? This map is from 1851. Look how accurate it is. And this is pre-planed. They had to do it all on the ground. That shows you how good they were at surveying and making maps. I'm just really impressed with older maps. Because maps are very important. They all had to do it from ground level. So they were talented. I'm a cartographer, right? I've shown you my maps. You understand. I appreciate fellow cartographers, yes.
So the land that's below the red thingy, is that part of Mexico?
No, here's the Texan border. This is area controlled by a certain tribe. Remember them? The Comanches. And so it's still part of the, but it's Comanche territory.
Okay.
Which is amazing because there are only a few thousand Comanches. So it gives you an idea how powerful, scary fighters there were. And that's an area bigger in Montana. So that, and it passed at the end of February. So the inauguration is in March. It's in, when I mean the area, I mean this area in the red is bigger in Montana. So it passed in February. And the whole idea was this. Polk would be inaugurated, and then literally be sworn in, he'd go into the White House and immediately sign the annexation. So Polk would sign it, that was the plan. It would already, so it's all passed at the end of February, just waiting 4 more days until Polk's inauguration. But wait a second. Who's president?
Tyler.
And what does Tyler do?
He signs it.
He signs it. I'll show you. I will get you. He got the last laugh. Tyler would be the president to sign annexation of Texas. Tyler got it, not Polk. And the Democrats were furious. We weren't too happy about it either. Tyler got the last laugh. And so there's a popular misconception that the Mexican War brought Texas into the Union. No, Texas was in the Union before the war was started. In fact, before Polk became president. It was this border issue. That would be the trigger. That's what Mexico said. That's what the U.S. said. So that would be the trigger. Texas is in the Union. Even though there's still some disagreements, Texas didn't want to give up Santa Fe. that'd be an issue. Yeah.
So even though that Tyler signed it, isn't that what Pope wanted anyways?
Yeah, but he wanted credit. Yeah, so Polk was really mad.
So it's 1845 Texas.
Yeah. Now, technically, they're not in the Union. It's got to be approved by the approved by the Texas legislature. But everybody knew Texas legislature wanted that. I mean, Houston's gambit worked. Then Houston would be very much opposed to secession, and that's when he'd still be in office. Is it making sounds? Oh, it's the impeachment hearings. You heard this sound, and now that's all my camera's going to hear is that sound. That's awesome. What about this guy? That is the last photograph of him taken.
Oh, wow.
He's very old. He's in pain. He can't eat because of his stomach, because he got a bullet through the stomach. And he isn't, but he's still fierce, and he's still involved in the campaign. And yeah, he might look old, but I wouldn't be afraid of him. And Jackson was still involved politically, and he really is a transformative character in American history. And so nearing the end, this is kind of one of those like, Jackson is still alive. Near the end of his life, he was asked this. You want to guess? Do you know?
What are your regrets?
He didn't mince any words. That's what Jackson regretted. And so Jackson, nearing the end, one thing about him, I didn't tell you the story. I didn't tell you about the assassination attempt, did I? 10 years before, while he was still president, the first ever attempt to assassinate a president? I don't know what I said, took place. Andrew Jackson, a man named Richard Lawrence, who he believed that Jackson kept him from being like the king of France or something like that. As we all know, Jackson had that power. And there's no king of France. But, so he had some issues. He decided that Jackson was responsible for this. His name was Richard Lawrence. And while Jackson was taking a walk outside the White House, he was always taking a walk outside, and nearing the National Bank, Lawrence walked up to them with 2 pistols. Now, these are flintlock pistols. They have one. They're loaded, muzzle loaded, fire one shot, and from about 4 feet away, jumped out, and everyone's like, ah! He pulled out this pistol, like one and one, like this. Pulled the pistol out and fired, and what happened? It basically just, it misfired. It just sizzled in the pan and didn't fire the pistol. And nobody knows why it didn't fire. And everyone's like, ah, as you can imagine. So, same thing. Both pistols. They both were working, should have been working perfectly fine, but Jackson was not shot.
Who was it?
Richard Lawrence.
Okay.
Jackson then responded by doing what? Yeah. Jackson took his cane out, threw him down, and nearly beat him to death. He had to pull Jackson, who was in his mid-60s, off, and they literally, like, he was going to kill him. Lawrence would be the first person in a federal court to be acquitted due to insanity in a federal case. That, because he was. And that's the first presidential assassination attempt. But trust me, people would think about it. We'll talk about Martin Van Buren. I was like this guy. Hey, what's going on? Ooh. So in 1845, Jackson did pass away. And remember, he was the last president that was not born an American citizen, even though the Constitution says every president has to be born an American citizen. Because he wasn't born an American citizen. What was he born? A British subject. Pre-Revolutionary War. And he fought in the Revolutionary War. So this is a real transformative president. You think about all the things that went on in his life, in the Revolutionary War, Declaration of Independence, writing the Constitution, the War of 1812. People went around at 3 miles an hour, and now there are trains and telegraph. I mean, this whole world was changed. And democracy. Good and bad things. Jackson is this transformative character. By the way, isn't she kind of creepy? Her neck, like, about ready to spin her head around. But anyways, I don't know. I'm not saying she's possessed. But the thing is, and this, like, they're very two-dimensional too. Okay, I don't know why I've looked at this picture so closely. Moving on. So Jackson's funeral was a big deal, and thousands went to his memorial service because he was either loved or, by a smaller group of people, intensely hated. In fact, you'll find only a few presidents that have that much emotion to them, at least for today. Well, no, you see it in your lifetime. President Bush had that. President Obama had intense love and intense hatred, and President Trump.
Is that because there's like two differences in the parties?
Well, I mean, there's obviously issues with the parties, but the parties actually are very strong. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the media. Maybe it's the lack that people frankly, don't follow very closely. They just get little tidbits and turn to like emotional responses. I really don't know. But it was much more noticeable. I mean, the intensity of the hatred of George W. Bush was huge. The intensity of the hatred for Obama was huge, even though he was mostly popular. There's still a lot of people just hated him. And then President Trump, it's really, I mean, it just is. Love him or hate him, it's really something to see. So, but like FDR was a little bit like that. Most people adored him. There was a small group of people that despised him with a passion that's hard to even put into terms. So you see this is a lot of transformative presidents, at least before that. So they went to his funeral. By the way, Jackson had a parrot. Yes, a real parrot, not one that exploded. And he loved this parrot. So he taught it to speak. And what did he teach him to say? No, every curse word that Jackson knew. And so Jackson, in fact, would have meetings in the White House, and he would say a word. And some people thought it was like hickory. Some people thought it was democracy. No one's exactly sure what the word was. But Jackson would say the word, and the parrot would just start screaming out obscenities until whomever was there that Jackson didn't want to talk to would leave. Well, and by the way, most of the curse words you know today, not me, you don't know, you've never heard those words before, but you've probably heard of curse words. They have them today, and then they have their own unique curse words, like every generation has. Well, they thought it'd be great if they brought Jackson's parrot to the memorial service. And so it's under a hood, so like that blanket. And in fact, Thomas Hart Benton of Missouri gave a talk. He got down and someone else started speaking. During that time, they thought, well, we should lift up the hood so people can see Jackson's beautiful parrot. So they lifted the hood up, and then somebody said the word. And the parrot just started screaming obscenities throughout the whole place. And they tried to cover up again, but he did not quit. Finally, they had to take the parrot away. And the memorial service kind of devolved into parrot curse words. I think Jackson would have liked that. I think that's a funeral he would have liked. So, Jackson has an incredible legacy of good and bad. What's it? The great series, Good and Evil. So, there is Lafayette Square. Remember Lafayette, the French nobleman who came to the United States because of the story of liberty? So, Lafayette Square is right in front of the White House. And then right in the middle of Lafayette Square is Jackson's statue. That's him at Battle of New Orleans. It's a pretty cool statue. My favorite Jackson statue is the one at in New Orleans. I know all the statues look the same, but I still can't help it. I like it. And you got to admit, too, another really well-framed picture, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't like to say I'm an artist, but yeah. So you notice I got the statue, Canada, White House, Washington Memorial, and there's another important thing, clouds. To get a good picture that involves sky, you got to get clouds. So you might have to wait for days. But you need clouds because it gives you the perspective, right? I mean, think about it. Look at it. And also, a pure blue sky is too much light and it bleeds into the edge of So moving on. So with that, but that picture did turn out pretty good. I got to admit, that turned out pretty good. So the goals of Polk's administration. Polk vowed one term. And Texas was already done. But Polk, his plan, get these 4 things done and then replaced by a Democrat. He wants another Democrat to win. We can't have a Whig. Parties were stronger than today. But lower the tariff and independent treasury. So he strengthened Van Buren's treasury. The tariff got lower. And so 2 big goals. And then remember Oregon in that 54-40 fight? They signed the Oregon Treaty.
The tariff on what?
Just tariff on all goods. So that remember that's a tax on imports. Yeah. So they just dropped it about 50%. To have something like the National Bank. but it's not a bank. It's just a way to distribute money out. It's actually not a, there's some good elements of it. And then, remember he said 5440 or 5? That's up here on this map. But what did the Oregon Treaty do? Just extend that 1818 line, the 49th parallel, from the Continental Divide to the sea. So from the Continental Divide to the sea, boom. And what did Polk want? That. That's what Polk wanted. He didn't want 5440. He wanted here. Because Britain really wanted the Columbia River Valley, and Polk wanted it. So Polk, that was a victory. But when he said 5440 or fight, that was a negotiating trick. When you negotiate for something, ask for more than what you want. So when you deal down, you come up closer to what you actually want. Don't negotiate lower than what you want, or even what you want, because when you have to go down, you might lose something. That's a negotiating trick that will not work with me, but will work with other people.
What was the one they settled for?
The 49th parallel. To the border of today. And then California. The problem with California is Mexico is furious about annexation, and they're not going to give it. So here's a glass negative of the old picture. And I love this one. I chose this one on purpose. Most of the time they have it where the imperfections of the glass are painted out, so you can't really see them. You see all the bubble marks in the glass? Imperfections when they made the glass, and a couple of the scratches. That was on the negative, and then when they tried to extract the picture from it, it came up with that. So I just think that's really cool, how you can see that. And these are all glass negatives up to about the 1870s, 1880s, it started going to silver oxide paper.
Is that Polk?
Yeah, that's Polk. And Polk looks very fierce. And like everybody else in the picture at that time, he looks uncomfortable. Because the exposure times were so long, you had to sit there like this and not move for 5 seconds. So everyone looks fierce and uncomfortable. And knowing what I know about Polk, he was fierce and uncomfortable. So with that, we're leading up to the Mexican-American War. Here's another one of those great maps of Mexico from 1845. It's a great map. And you can still see the kind of, we didn't really give up Texas yet. But you notice it's a war. They have two countries named, Mexican-American War. And the country that comes first, what do we know about them? They lose. So if there's a war with two, a war, or just any event, but where you have two names, the loser comes first. Does that make sense? Huh? No. See?
Oh.
That's what I meant. Yeah. So Mexican-American War, Mexico lost. When they have so like Spanish-American War, who won?
America.
The loser comes first. The Russo-Japanese War, who won?
I got the first two.
How about this one? The Franco-Prussian War. Who lost? France. Francos? Who are the Francos? Prussia won, but right after that would come Germany. Yeah.
Why?
It just became kind of a tradition. So there's no real reason. We always end up losing first. Let me give you another example. We are in a state. There are two colleges. Cat Ribs. Who's the loser? Cats. Okay, so moving on. Yeah, I mean, it all coming together. So with that, the Slidell mission. John Slidell went to, darn it, last period was like 3 people in Cats shirts, so I really, yeah, I know. Huh?
He was just trying to prove why it just
You can just miss out.
So, don't worry about Forgive U.S. Clips. I'm not going to talk about that. But Slidell was sent down, this is before the war started, to Mexico City to try to get the Rio Grande as the southern border and also by California and New Mexico. And if you look at that map over there, see over there the big orange area? Everyone quick look over here. That's New Mexico. It was huge. That's a massive amount of land. Well, slide out, that picture was taken during the Civil War, and I like that picture. He would be a Confederate. He tried to get Britain to enter the war on the side of the Confederacy. But that's another story for down the road. Slidell was ignored. Mexico was furious about the annexation. In fact, Santa Anna was ousted from power because of that, and he was in Cuba. We'll come back to Santa Anna, so don't worry about that right now. But the Mexican government, which was basically just junta, some generals in charge, said no. And Mexico's in complete disarray because of this. So Polk tries to find another way. In fact, he comes up with 2 ways to do it. And both of them are kept secret and incredibly duplicitous. The first one would be this. So don't worry, everyone got that? Don't worry about US claims, I'm just not. All right, so the first one, here is the border the US claims, the Rio Grande River. Here's the Nueces River. That's what Mexico claims is the border. Now the US has a tiny little army, less than 20,000 men, but he sends 2,000 of them, so a couple regiments under a very effective general, so Zachary Taylor. So when they say, don't say like when they send the army down under Taylor, they'll just say they sent Taylor down. And that means his command is going with him. They sent Taylor down to the mouth of the Rio Grande. That is area that's disputed. And they begin to aggressively patrol around the Rio Grande with cavalry and dragoons. Aggressively patrolling. They're hoping the Mexicans will do what? Say it again? Yeah, fight, attack them. And that will give the US an excuse to do what? Go to war and take California. So this is a pretty amazing operation. Polk is trying to provoke the Mexicans into going to war. And the US has a tiny army. I mean, the US could very well lose this, and who knows what would happen. But they go down there and they aggressive patrol. And even though Taylor didn't like this operation, Taylor was a Whig. He was opposed to it, but he was a brigadier general in the army, and he went down. Now, he was in the army pre-West Point. By the way, West Point, 1821, that's the U.S. what? Yeah, military academy for the army. The U.S. has well-trained officers. Mexican officers were not well-trained. A lot of them were, you know what I mean by cronies? You know, people who were just like the sons of wealthy people. They would buy their sons a position as an officer. They weren't qualified officers. So the U.S. had that, but a tiny army. He was before that. He was known as a hard-fighting general, veteran all the way down to the the War of 1812. Unlike a lot of officers, he did not worry too much about having exactly spit and polish uniforms, like perfectly fit, every button shined, had these big brass buttons had to be shined. He didn't care about that. All he cared is about, to his point of view, that you fought. In fact, in battle, he would not wear a uniform like he's wearing here. He wore a red flannel shirt and a straw hat because he didn't care. In fact, the men loved him for that, and they gave Taylor a nickname. Now, nicknames all got to start with what? Old Rough and Ready. Which I love the name Rough and Ready. By the way, that description, doesn't he sound a little like somebody else we just talked about? Old who?
Hickory.
Old Hickory. He has that appeal of Jackson.
Old what?
Old Rough and Ready. Rough and Ready. Rough, like, yeah, R-O-U-G-H. Rough. Oh, Rough and Ready. That kind of words.
So, didn't they name someone like Young Hickory though?
Yeah, Young Hickory was Polk. Now, you also notice that he should have probably got that check. That's called foreshadowing.
What?
Rep blows nose. No, it's just a bubble in the film.
I thought it was like cancer.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was cancer.
Yeah, I know. Kind of looks like it though, doesn't it? So with that, they marched down to begin to aggressively patrol. And some of the cavalry and dragoon units went across the river. They went into Mexico. Not disputed territory, Mexico. They're trying to provoke a Mexican reaction. Don't forget this. And also the Rio Grande is really shallow. So it's really easy to cross in a number of places. You always think about the Rio Grande being this border between two countries. It must be a huge river. It's relatively wide, but really shallow. And the color of dark root beer. Yummy root beer. By the way, what's a dragoon? I said it, people were like, oh, dragon. It's a fire-breathing lizard. And we had these as, no, it's mounted infantry. They would ride on a horse, and they wouldn't fight from the horse. They'd get off the horses and fight. So they would ride to back, so they could move quicker. Cavalry fights from the horseback, so they would use swords, but they're still using lances. Heavy cavalry. You know what I mean by a lance, a 15-foot long pike? Which is someone is riding at you with a 15-foot long pike, what do? You get out of the way.
Did the dragons fall on the ground?
15 feet away.
The dragons and the dragoons. Well, it happened. On April 25th, 1846, by the way, these are dragoons. And it's during the war, but just not these dragoons. And they want us to believe it's a dog. That's all I'm going to say. But I'm not saying it's a feral pig. They call it the Thornton Affair. And so U.S. soldiers were attacked. Some were killed. There were casualties. In fact, over 20 casualties. So some killed, some were wounded. And word of this got back to Polk. And Polk went to Congress and said, Mexico has made, and this two key words, first off, an unprovoked attack on American soldiers on American soil. Now, did you catch what I said? Now, there's two really big words. First off, was it unprovoked? No! They were doing everything they could to get attacked. That's what we call a lie. But secondly, it's even bigger. To this day, we don't know what side of the Rio Grande this actually happened. Texas put this monument after the Civil War on the north bank of the Rio Grande, so in Texas, to mark this spot. But it very well could have happened south of the Rio Grande. In fact, there's a really good chance it might have started south of the Rio Grande, and then kind of a running fight over the very shallow river into the north. But Polk said American soldiers were killed on American soil, attacked on American soil. We don't know it now, and I guarantee you, Polk did not know it then. So what is Polk doing? He is lying to get the United States into a war to conquer California. That's what happened. And even though a lot of Northern Whigs were opposed, and do get that down, Whigs were opposed, Northern Whigs were opposed, Congress did declare war. And this would be a bitterly divisive war of conquest. Bitterly divisive.
Did you say Northern Whigs?
Yeah, Northern Whigs. And fortunately, the United States would never do something like this again. So moving on, no, we would do it many times. That's the word I meant. Many times. Most famously, in this century, the United States would go to war against Spain in the Spanish-American War by claiming the Spanish blew up an old American battleship called the Maine, which, no, they did not. But we said we did. We'll come to that, obviously, in 1898. Yeah. Oh, everybody does it. The U.S. would do it, but just for U.S., though, the U.S. would do it to get involved in a civil war in South Vietnam called the Tonkin Gulf Resolution. That's the Vietnam War. It happened in your lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
Iraq. President Bush said he knows for a fact that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction, which are chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons, implying that not only will they use it, but also they were involved with the September 11th attack. Well, first off, they were not involved with the September 11th attack, and they did not have anything like weapons of mass destruction. They barely had an army. But he said, I know for a fact, and the U.S. invaded. Yes?
So why is it called Thornton?
That was the captain in charge of the unit, of the dragoons. So, a number of Whigs were elected, most prominently Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln's first electoral victory would be to Congress in 1846 against the war. And that is a young Lincoln. This is actually a little bit after that, but boy, Lincoln, he's a big guy. Look at those hands. He was actually a really big, powerful guy.
How tall was
6'4". And he was just really strong. I'll tell you a story about that when we get to the Civil War. It's just kind of amazing. But Lincoln would give what's called the spot resolution, where he demanded to know the spot on American soil where American blood was shed. Basically saying that Polk was lying. This is 1847. So it's called the spot resolution. Now, it wouldn't pass, and Lincoln would not win re-election. But this would kind of give Lincoln a name in Whig circles. And then soon, as this kind of prominent but unknown Republican, what do you call a candidate that people don't really know? He became a dark horse in 1860.
Wait, you said he was a
Whig.
But what was he?
Then he would become a Republican when the Republican Party was formed in 1854.
But what would he get?
Member of
reelected
Congress.
at Congress?
And so with that, California also rebelled, and this was his other plan. Polk engineered a rebellion in California, creating he had people do it for him, the Bear Flag Republic. On June 14, 1846, Californians and Mexicans who lived there, and Californians, American immigrants there, rebelled against Mexican rule and declared an independent country. And that was then the U.S. thought they could annex it. That was Polk's plan. But you notice this is after the declaration of war. They didn't know about the declaration of war because there wasn't telegraph lines yet. So California was going to revolt, or California is going to revolt in case Taylor's plan or Taylor's gambit on the Rio Grande failed. That's the first flag of California. You got to admit that's a really cool flag. It's just a piece of canvas and a red line. It's pretty sloppily made. It literally did it like real fast with a stencil and a star. And that, as I understand, it's a bear. Even though it kind of looks like a what? Feral pig. Yeah, everything comes back to feral pigs. That flag's gone now. It was in a museum in San Francisco. And in 1906, what happened in San Francisco? Earthquake, and much of the town was burnt down, including that flag. Now, the United States was directly involved, even though the U.S. acted like they weren't. An American mapping expedition with a company of American soldiers under Captain John Fremont. Under Fremont was on a mapping expedition through Oregon territory, and then they went into Mexico and just happened to arrive in Sonoma, California. Happened to arrive in Sonoma just a week before the revolution. And then when the revolution began, what side did Fremont take? He joined the revolution, exactly. The U.S. aided the revolution in an independent country to try to take California. Would the U.S. ever do that again? Many, 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 many times. In fact, we just aided a coup in Bolivia.
Does the California state flag looks
Almost exactly like that. But that's it's a really cool flag. I don't know why, it just looks really, I wish we had a color. Huh? About 100. About 100 minutes. Hawaii, the Congo.
What about Hawaii?
The
U.S. Navy would join American planners to overthrow the Queen of Hawaii. Queen Liliuokalani. We'll get to her.
I didn't even know that.
How do I?
I said I didn't.
Oh yeah. It's interesting about Hawaii. We gotta talk about that. We'll get to the story. Hawaii. Yeah, they were an independent country. But a lot of American planners, pineapples were the big deal. All right, lead my friend. Oh, three. We're up.
I didn't even know we had a
All right, renting the stream.